152 more deaths reported Wednesday, pushing the total beyond 1,350. The World Health Organization still concerned the virus could go global.
We need to focus on the task, and the task is to contain the virus, to detect the cases, to treat the cases. If we keep doing those things, yes, we may see a drop in the number of cases, but I think it's way too early to try and predict the beginning, the middle, or the end of this epidemic right now.
That's Dr. Michael Ryan, the World Health Organization's Emergencies Program Executive Director, speaking at a conference in Geneva, Switzerland. Aboard a cruise ship quarantined in Japan, another 44 people have tested positive for the virus. Now 218 confirmed cases aboard that vessel. Fallout from the botched counting in the Iowa caucuses 10 days ago. The chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party has resigned, and Democrat presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard tells Fox's The Ingram Angle the National Party chairman should quit as well.
I've called for Tom Perez to resign. You can look to what's happened in Iowa, how Iowa voters were really screwed out of making sure that their voices were heard. They took that time to go in and cast their votes, only to have to deal with the debacle one after the other. Tom Perez failing to take responsibility for that.
Representative Gabbard, who finished with about 3% of the vote in Tuesday's New Hampshire primary, says nonetheless she will continue her campaign. Mobile, Alabama, gunfire inside a Walmart store. Police say two men in the store argued with one another and then pulled guns and shot each other. Both reported in critical condition at the hospital. Not clear yet if they were customers or employees. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on. That was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
What does love mean to you? Is it passion, romance, or the feeling you get when making someone happy? Is it loyalty and commitment, or being completely vulnerable? Is love the feeling they sing about in songs or make movies about? Or is it just being with that one person who makes you feel safe? This Valentine's Day, celebrate the many ways to love with an exquisite 3-course dining experience perfectly crafted by Mezcla Bistro. From start to finish, you'll enjoy every bite and every moment with the person you love. Mezcla, a true taste of love.
A federal judge has ordered the Trump administration to restore a telephone hotline about immigration complaints.
The judge issuing a preliminary injunction ordering the free hotline that allowed detained immigrants to report concerns about the conditions where they were being held to be put back in place. The hotline was taken away shortly after it was featured on the Netflix show Orange is the New Black. The group Freedom for Immigrants claims Immigration and Customs Enforcement yanked the line because it drew attention to their criticism of immigration detention conditions. It's not immediately clear when the line would be restored. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
Attorney General William Barr says he will testify to the House Judiciary Committee about the agency's decision to reduce its sentencing recommendation for Roger Stone, the former political advisor to the president. The reduction came after the president tweeted criticism of the initial suggested sentence of 9 years. Some have suggested that Barr should resign, others in Congress calling for an investigation into what role the president may have played in the change. 2 Baltimore area police officers injured and a suspect killed in a shooting on Wednesday.
The officers, one from Baltimore City, the other from Baltimore County, are recovering from their wounds. Police Commissioner Michael Harrison says the officers were working with the Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force,
attempting to serve a felony arrest warrant in Northeast Baltimore.
The suspect would not go quietly and shots were fired. The suspect was dead at the scene. Governor Larry Hogan identified the man as an ex-corrections official. He said this situation required multiple agencies
working together to go after a really bad guy.
The warrant was out of Pennsylvania for attempted murder. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo suggesting he might allow federal immigration officials limited access to a Department of Motor Vehicles database. Governor Cuomo and President Trump have been in a battle over the state's sanctuary city policies. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Michael Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael Nicholas.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says. I have it right here. I never leave home without it. The United States Constitution is one of the foundations of this radio program. Certainly the base upon which much of the chatter coming from yours truly originates. We are, the real Joe Cruz and I. Good afternoon, real Joe Cruz.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, the real Joe Cruz is here. The Constitution is something that we uphold, broadcast, praise, defend, explain, you name it. The Constitution are us. And we do that every day from 1600 till 1800 every day, from 4 until 6 here in Tall Tales. And if you want to be a part of our international radio listening audience, you're at the right place. And if you want to participate, if you want your voice broadcast all around the world, then all you have to do is dial 888-TALK, 888-8255. If you do that, the real Joe Cruz will greet you pleasantly on the phone. He will get your name, rank, and horsepower and put a little note on my screen, and I will welcome you to the airwaves, and we will chat about the important issues of the day. Starting out today with what we refer to as Zemi Ikotni. Zemi Ikotni are backwards bilingual play on words that means meet the press. Every day I look at the content of the editorial pages of our two newspapers, am repelled by what I see on the editorial page of the Daily News, because it's almost always some boilerplate that they got from USA Today or Gannett or someplace like that. Today, it is the USA Today editorial board, and the title of it is Evacuate Americans from Ship. And that's all I'm going to read from it. I point out that people look to their daily newspapers for editorial policy, and the Post seldom disappoints. It runs pretty good, edgy, topical, fact-based editorials, almost always bearing a call to action after calling out some government official who perhaps is not doing his job. Today, The title of the editorial is Machete Attack Perpetrators' Elders Should Share the Blame and Take Responsibility. Now, when we talk about the machete attack perpetrators, I think everybody remembers that fateful day when people were trying to pull down a side street near the university and were attacked by a couple young men bearing machetes who scared the dickens out of those folks in those cars. Well, they were finally brought to justice. They pled guilty. One was sentenced to 24 years in the pokey, the other one to 14. And this editorial goes into some of the details and makes a pretty good comment on what happened and what ought to happen. It goes like this. Former Senator Judith Guthertz testified on Wednesday as one of the victims in the machete attack near the entrance to the university last year. On June 4, as cars with students, professors, and University of Guam campus visitors were heading toward the Route 10 intersection, several of the vehicles were attacked by a group of youth, two of whom were charged in the case. Guthertz testified at the sentencing of. The incident caused serious damage to the vehicles, and for the drivers like her, Guthertz said, the emotional trauma remains. It also left Guthertz, who teaches at the local university, with a lingering fear of getting attacked in her home or on the streets. This machete attack has left our community with yet another reason to be worried about random attacks. The feeling of safety in our community has been broken by this and a growing number of burglaries and random attacks against people and intrusion into our private properties, fueled by rage, alcoholism, or drugs. And in many cases, a combination of these factors, our community has become less trusting and more fearful. Guthertz asked for the maximum punishment under the laws these defendants broke. At the time this editorial was written, the sentencing hearing was still underway for brothers Jordan Rockelap and Emmanuel Russelap. And Guthertz also wants the convicts to learn the lesson from their bad deeds and not just walk away scot-free, like so many other defendants on the island who managed to cut plea deals that have spared many criminals from serving time behind bars. We feel for the victims of this machete attack and for the hurt and emotional trauma other victims have experienced on this once generally peaceful island. There was a time when we, Guam residents, didn't feel the need to fence off our yards and install gates on our driveways. We used to feel secure in our homes and neighborhoods. Installing surveillance cameras used to be an exception rather than an expectation in our neighborhoods. The convicted perpetrators were involved in a fight that spilled over into the street near the UOG campus and resulted in random attacks on strangers in their vehicles. And one of the convicts' cousins was injured by slashing of a machete in this incident. Our trust as a community has been shaken. To the elders of these young men, we hope you also own this problem. Understand the consequence of what these perpetrators did to our community. Don't offer excuses for what they did. Use this incident as a way for others in your circle of friends and family as a learning experience. While she asked for full punishment, Guthertz said she has also forgiven the perpetrators. She gave the perpetrators a parting message, including this: get a life, change your ways, respect Guam and all the people who call Guam home. It's a lesson we hope will be taken to heart. Okay, well, here's the paragraph that I think is the key here. To the elders of these young men, we hope you will also own this problem. Now, when we talk about elders, who exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about elderly people in general? I had a hard time coming to grips with it, but I am an elderly person. In fact, I'm probably a very elderly person. But I don't feel much responsibility for what these young men did. The fact that a person is old doesn't make him an elder in the sense that this editorial is using it. When we talk in terms of elders in this sense, we're talking about the senior members of a community who, by virtue of their age, experience, and standing, are seen as having some influence over the community. Now, in a small American town, it's not too hard to figure out who the elders are. You know, they're older folks. They're almost always men. Sorry, ladies. I suppose the word elder could be any one of the sexes that we recognize nowadays. But it's most generally men. It's usually business types. Often folks that are on the city council, the school board, the Rotary, that gang. But that's not what we're talking about here. The editorial says, to the elders of these young men, we hope you will also own this problem. Now, here, this is the way I read it. Having lived here for a long, long time, being one who pays attention to what goes on, one who reads the newspaper, watches TV, talks with other folks, etc. The two young men here, the two machete wielders, were from the island that we used to call Truck. We call it Chook nowadays. It's an island. It's not an island. It's a group of islands, actually, in the Federated States of Micronesia. And it would seem that a lot of people coming here as habitual residents from Chook, pursuant to the Compact of Free Association between the United States and the Federation of Micronesia, have a certain difficulty in fitting into our community. I suppose that others will criticize me for engaging in a racially biased explanation, exhibiting a certain amount of prejudice. But I think the popular feeling in our community is that for those from Truck, too much drinking, way too much drinking, too much violence, more so than any from the other groups in the freely associated states. So not speaking as plainly as I am, I think what the what the Post is saying here is that the elders of these young men, that is senior members of the Chukis community here on the island, need to own this problem. That's what that's the way I read this editorial. So senior members of the Chukis community need to say, we need to do something. We didn't get after the cars with machetes, but it was people from our hometown that did. And they're supposed to look up to us, and they're supposed to respect us. And we're supposed to be able to set good examples for them. And when they step out of line, it's as much our problem as it is theirs. So I'm going to repeat this. To the elders of these young men, we hope you will own this problem. Understand the consequences of what these perpetrators did to our community. Don't offer excuses for what they did. Use this incident as a way for others in your circle of friends and family as a learning experience. Now, you know, after this happened, everyone and his brother was holding town meetings around the island. Senators were doing it. The governor was doing it. I didn't see anyone from that particular community holding a town meeting anywhere. That would have been a really good start. So I think that it would have been nice had the post been a little bit more direct and a little bit less roundabout, alleviating the responsibility for my having to get in there and speak very frankly, which of course is my job, and I do it every day. But I'm going to give the Post the coveted Blue Star today. There it is. Now, you know, I used to say this at the beginning of the program all the time when I first went on the air here on The Point, and that is that, you know, I have 24 default topics that I could always talk about should there not be anything in the news that's worth my time, worth your time. I had a couple, that was 1 to 24, and then I also had a 0 and a 00. And I used to invite folks when I was, no matter what it was that I was talking about, I used to tell people that 0 stood for this. Bob, you don't know what you're talking about. And anyone could be free to call at any time and disagree with the host of Tall Tales, me, and say, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about. And then there, if you weren't in tune with that, there was 00, which reads like this. Bob, you still don't know what you're talking about. So having listened to my explanation of that editorial, the machete incident, Judy Guthert's comments, etc., I will once again invite you to avail yourself of 0 or 00. And if you think that's the case, then please call in and say, Bob, you don't know what you're talking about. And it'd be nice if you could explain why you think that I don't know what I'm talking about. And that is, in fact, the essence of talk radio. That talk radio depends on the host being for something or against something, so that you can call up and say, you know, Bob, what you said really makes a lot of sense. You're right on target. Or you can call in and say, Bob, you know, I listened to you explain X, Y, Z. That is the poorest explanation I ever heard. You're way, way off base on that one. Either one works. That is the purpose of Tall Tales. In fact, that's the purpose of talk radio. Okay, so we go from there to the card. And this is what I've got on the card for today. I've got a little bit more of Titano versus the community. I'm not going to talk about Sabina Paris and her war against bestiality today unless someone has an overpowering desire to bring it back up. Yesterday we talked about GPA versus insufficiency, as you were inefficiency. And I gave GPA several verbal pats on the back. GPA is back on the card today. Now it's the CCU, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. And today it's CCU versus CCU. Then I've got Governor Lou Leon Guerrero versus our attempts at EITC reimbursement, showing how she has miserably failed in that endeavor. And then I've got the Department of Public Works versus EDINGA. And I've got Howard Hills versus political status. And I finally disposed of Chief Ignacio versus Public Safety. Yeah, and I haven't gotten to Tall Tales versus the Hell No group. Maybe I'll get that far today. So I might have a disconnect here. I'm looking for my card materials for today, and I'm not finding it. Bad news. I'm just going to have to kind of wing it, I guess, because I didn't bring my materials along. Okay, as far as Titano versus the community is concerned, yesterday I read a one-page article by Titano in the Pacific Island Times, and I said that it should have been captioned "Once Upon a Time." I'm going to go to my phone call from Kellis here, and then I'll come back to Titano. Good afternoon, Kellis.
Hey, Judge, I hate to say this, but you don't know jack about machete, guys. Because unless, one, you've been so drunk, and two, you have to be from one of the outer islands, three, a fight with your cousin to stab him. If you haven't done any of those things all at one time, you should not judge.
Yeah. In other words, it's kind of like walk in my shoes before you criticize my machete?
As a matter of fact, I don't think they should, because unless any of the other jurors and the judge have been in that situation, who are they to judge them?
Well, that's certainly a 21st century way of looking at things, Kellis.
Because I was sitting there thinking, because on that line, meth, dealers should only be judged by meth dealers. Murderers should only be, judged by murderers and rapists, etc.
Well,
because it's supposed to be a jury of your peers.
That's very true. That's what the Fifth Amendment says: a jury of your peers. Yeah.
So I think these young men should be let go, and I don't even think they should get the finger wag. Unless you are in their shoes, you cannot give them the finger wag. Because, I mean, if you look at how everyone else that comes up to the jury pool and to the judicial system on Guam, especially the meth dealers and everything, they just get the finger wag.
Yeah, maybe something like a blue ribbon or something like that would be...
A blue ribbon, unless they can come up with a jury of their peers. Other than that, I think they should just be released.
Well, I'll take that under advisement. And by the way, you're not the first person that called up and told me that I didn't know Jack.
Well, I don't know. I know a guy named Jack, but I haven't heard him lately on the radio.
He usually comes along more closer to the end of the program, Kellis. But I get you.
Okay, Judge. I was just calling to give you time to find what you were looking for.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I didn't find it. Let me take a cruise through the Facebook here while I'm contemplating what I might have done with that. I'm afraid that I printed my stuff up and left it home. Well, anyhow, the show must go on. So let's see. I've got Ishmael Velez starts out the program by saying, in the Pacific, there's a beautiful place where culture and heritage fill the land. An island which holds you in warm embrace, where its people's future is at hand. But a crisis brews upon its shores of financial and identity turmoil. Our future, yes, mine and yours, is being decided by a gargoyle. Independence and indigenous are words in her book of spells, but when spoken aloud, they cause vertiginous whirling together uneducated brain cells. Well, thank you, Ishmael. And I've got another Leon Guerrero here. This is the day for Leon Guerrero's. I'm still waiting for Let's Make a Deal Camacho to start actions against those using government vehicles to go to lunch and other abuses. After all, Linda Uggan was fired for using a government vehicle to deliver a complaint to her supervisor, and he's against CSC's decision to reinstate her to the position she was fired from. Okay, and Ishmael Velez, Machete Attack sounds like a prequel to Machete Kills, a Danny Trejo movie. I saw one of those Machete movies once upon a time. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll come right back here.
Why do good employees quit? We've given you 6 reasons already. Could there possibly be more? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I'll have part 3 of those reasons why our best workers sometimes hit the road.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The UOG Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific, Thursday, which is tonight, February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., $60 per person, includes cultural delicacies, free-flowing drinks, and live entertainment. Love Languages in the Pacific will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, well, here we are again. I was talking about the piece that Senator Kelly Marsh Titano wrote for the magazine called Pacific Island Times. Pretty good magazine. The publisher is Marvik Kagarangan, and they run some pretty good stuff in there. Even the other governor, Leon Guerrero, that is Ken, is a regular columnist. But before I get to that, let me see what I can gather from a little chat with John. Maybe John is calling me to tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Hi, John.
Half a day, Bob.
Half a day.
Anyway, it's about Chuukese leaders.
Uh-huh.
You know, Senator Rigel, he's a Chuukese. Did he come out and say anything about that incident?
I don't think he did, tell you the truth, yeah.
Well, I can tell you now, he's coming out and he's still against us local fishermen. So it's kind of hard because we think he's really protecting the Chuukese fishermen.
I see.
So he's putting us against the Chuukese and the locals because the fact is it's really Chuukese and locals fishing on Guam.
Okay, can you explain?
Well, I really miss Angel Santos because he was a really fighter for a local.
Can you explain what the fishing?
Well, here in Guam, majority of the fish stores are Chuukese.
Okay.
And Senator Clint, he's a Chuukese, and he's trying to ban the locals from fishing.
And how is he doing that, John?
He has a bill to ban scuba diving, scuba fishing,
I see.
And that's what we use to catch fish. I mean, how are we supposed to be under there catching fish without breathing?
Okay.
It's pretty hard, especially if you're trying to support our fish market. But so if he does that, so what's happening is the Chuukese stores, they recruit young ones from the islands, from their island. So they make them fish about 4 months, 6 months. And then because they pay them very minimum, like $10 each a night And if they don't like it, they just send them back to Chuk. Then they recruit others. Here in Guam, our fishermen have been doing it for 30 years. We never change them out.
And
So,
what method of fishing do the Chukis fishermen use?
They do both. They do scuba, but majority of them are not certified or anything. So, and they're all young. They're young kids, so they can free dive.
Okay.
Us, we're old already. We can't free dive. We're too old. We need to breathe.
We're see.
50, 60 years old. So we can't compete with that group because they just change them out. They recruit them. The stores, they recruit them.
And
they bring them in.
And Clint Rogel has introduced a bill to ban scuba fishing?
Yes. And with that, he's really, it's really sad because he won't recuse himself because he's a Chukis, but he's really helping the Chukis. Like you said, that's why I really miss a leader like Angel Santos, because if they would bring this issue up, he would really fight for the locals, because if they do that, their real goal is to just stop fishing. Their initiatives, they just want to stop fishing.
Stop it altogether?
Yes.
Why
Although they already have 5 preserves, Bob, on this island.
Uh-huh.
You can't fish. What else do they want to preserve? They want to preserve the whole island? For what?
When you say they, who do you mean by they?
I'm talking about Clint, Senator Harris, Tina Munoz Barnes. See, so like Tina Munoz Barnes, her son works for the Coral Reef. The ones really behind this is the Coral Reef Initiative. It's Vanji Lujan, Carla Leon Guerrero, and like the Senator Munoz Barnes, his son works for them. So we got big investors, or big fun guys from off island who are pushing this. It's like the far left who's really want to stop locals from fishing, and that's basically what it's going to do.
What is Coral Reef? I'm not familiar with that.
The Coral Reef Initiative.
Uh-huh.
It's an initiative worldwide. They want to protect the coral reefs.
Okay.
But then if you come to Guam, all the preserves are in those pristine areas where the sewage isn't coming out and destroying the coral reefs. So if they want to make a preserve, the coral reef, they should look at all the sewer outflows and focus on that and bring back the coral there. Instead of the pristine areas banning, well, they already did. They already banned us from going. They already have a preserve. And the preserve is really good. It's working. But they still want to continue to try to harass the locals. But when you brought up the issue of the leaders, I wanted to point out that Clint is the Chukis. And it's really hard to believe how a small little island nation like Chuk can really screw up Guam as far as our education, our public health, our public safety. It's unbelievable. And now our local fishermen, we're just so little, Bob, and it just bothers me to hear, that Clint is doing this.
So it sounds to me like you have 2 problems. One is that Clint is trying to ban all scuba fishing. And then 2, this Coral Reef Initiative, and going back, won't ban scuba fishing in favor of the free diving fishermen who are primarily from Chuk. And then the second problem you have is the Coral Reef Initiative that, in your words, wants to preserve everything to the point where there wouldn't be any fishing at all. Is that right, John?
Yes, Bob. That's what's happening.
See.
It's crazy. It's like the sky's falling, but instead they won't address the areas where really needs to be addressed, and that's pollution. Pollution and other items. But, instead of banning, we've talked to them and we asked them for regulations. Like if you go to the mainland, you can only catch a certain lobster at this size. You can only catch salmon during the season, etc. But they don't ban them. They have their officers going out there inspecting the fish, catches, but they don't do that. Here in Guam, they just want to ban it. No regulations, no nothing. Just stop fishing and then import all the fish from China, Indonesia, and Chuk. You know, in Chuk, they ban scuba fishing, but you know what they're doing? They're using dynamite. So it's like, it's crazy. And if you go to the airport, they're shipping it in, and you inspect the fish. They do that, and it's just. I just wanted to bring that up. That I want the people of Guam know that here in our legislature now, our law-making body, we have a Chukis in there, and he sure is helping the Chukis people.
Okay.
And amongst the other senators, zero. Special interests. Tina William son working for the Coral Reef Initiative. Talina Nelson, their parents, they live right by the beach, and they don't want no one to fish there. But you know, here in Guam, there's no one owns the beach, so they really get pissed off when people go fishing in their area. They think that they own it, so they're using their daughter to stop us from fishing.
You said
Anyways.
Tina Mooney Barnes' son works for the Coral Reef, and
Yes.
Now you
Yes.
said that this is an international movement. Do they have a presence here on the island?
Yes, Vanji Lujan and Carlotta Leon Guerrero, they're getting paid
to by the Coral Reef Initiative.
Yes.
Carlotta is on the governor's staff, isn't she?
Yeah. But with her side notes or side work or extra pay or part time. It's her and Vanji Lujan. For years, they've been wanting to stop us.
I see.
So what their next plan, besides scuba fishing, banning it, is to put 10 more preserves. So can you imagine where are they going to put the 10 more preserves? Guam is so small. Anyways, I just wanted to bring up that concern because it's unbelievable how a small nation can really screw up our island. And our leaders are not saying anything. Ever since that Compact Impact started, just a mess.
Well,
total mess.
It sounds like not only a small nation, but also a large international movement are messing up our island, according to you, John, right? Two things.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We have all that written up. And
we
know it.
How many local scuba fishermen do you think there are?
There's only Paul, Roman, Jerry, and Domi, 4. And only 3 do it twice a week. And then with the Chukis group, they practically fish every day because they have the crew. They have all the young ones. Like I said, they recruit them. They pay them like $10 or even $5 a day. And then what happens is if they don't like the job, they just kick them out or send them back to Chuk. And they recruit some more young ones. So they always have fresh, young, strong fishermen who can free dive. Us, we're dying. I mean, we're old already. All our kids, well, fortunately, our kids are going to school. They're doing something else. They don't want to fish. They only want to eat fillet fish. But the older, the malangkus, like they say, they just want their local fish.
I got it. Well, John, I learned something today. I wasn't aware of the different interests, the Coral Reef Initiative and the Banning Scuba Diving Initiative, and the interplay between your 4 scuba fishermen and the fishermen from Chuk. So I'm glad you brought it up and educated our international radio listening audience.
I'm going to send you some of the facts on this. But if you look at Rhoda, you look at Saipan, when it comes to fish, you can go to the fiesta. I was there in Rhoda Fiesta.
Mm-hmm.
They have deer meat, they have cow meat, no fish. But I brought 2 fishermen over, so we went fishing. And this is the fish. This is reef fish. And boy, the manuncus, it's like candy. Because like Rhoda, I mean, there's no commerce there. There's no fishermen, but they. Anyways, I just wanted to bring it up. When you see these manuncus, when they see the tapiga or the hangan or local fish, they love it. It's their life.
Yeah. Okay, John. Well, once again,
Thanks, Bob. Keep up the good work, and I really. Oh, another thing I wanted.
Oops. Sorry, John. I thought you were finished. Okay. Well, there you have it. A little fisherman war, as it were, from John. John, I'm sorry I cut you off. I thought you were finished. You said you had another thing. If you want to call back with another thing, please feel free. Okay, I'm looking at Facebook here. Ken Leon Guerrero says, what about connecting the card to CCU versus ratepayers? After all, those are needless raises. Well, maybe we can pick that up tomorrow when I've got my stuff with me. What I wanted to talk about today was how the CCU took the effort to go back and cure the illegal raises that they made in violation of the open government law. But I'll get to that a little later on. If you want to talk about the size of the raises, that's certainly fair game. And let's see, Jose Martinez says if the Machete Boys were government of Guam employees, they would have only received probation. Well, I could tell you one thing, if they were government of Guam employees, they'd still be working, right? Because we have a job protection program. Anyone who's indicted for a crime will stay on the payroll because everyone's innocent until proven guilty. Jesse Limtiaco. Jose, I have a friend that was attacked by a machete, and the attacker, who is Chuckese, was only charged with aggravated assault. I don't think the attacker ever served time. And then more Jose back on fishing. One thing for sure, Tumon only became pristine because it was designated a preserve. Seems like if you want to compete with freedivers, become one. That's kind of like cattlemen and sheep herders, isn't it? You know, the homesteaders and the cattlemen, freedivers and scuba divers out on the reef. Gus Jasonga says scuba gear should not be included in reef spear fishing, period. Spear fishing is like sea farmers harvesting stock is needed without scuba gear. Well, I don't know enough about this to rule on it, Real Joe Cruz. I can say this. Back in my younger days, I used to do some scuba diving once upon a time, never fished. And I can remember going out and on the reef with a snorkel and what was called a Hawaiian sling. But I wasn't much of a threat to the fish, I'll tell you that.
You didn't get any?
I didn't get any.
It's okay.
Yeah, I gave it the old college try, but I wasn't a very skillful fisherman. I'm probably better at wading, being tall and all, you know. Okay, so back to the card here. The CCU versus the CCU. The news stories covered a CCU meeting that complied with all requisites of the open government law, made a point that counsel for the CCU, that would have been Kelly, what's his last name? No, it's a different.
Sorry.
Different. Kelly Clark. Yeah, Kelly Clark. And it's not in parentheses either. Yeah. Yeah, Kelly Clark was able to find a case from Alaska Supreme Court apparently holding that when a government agency made errors such as the errors made with the open government law, those matters could be approached de novo, that is, again, from scratch. And that's what the CCU did. They went back to all of these, let's back up a second. November of the year before last, the CCU gave some large raises to managerial employees in executive session. And one of the newspapers wrote, yeah, well, they gave these raises, and it was in executive session. And guess who pounced on that? The words executive session. I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. You can guess after we come back from this break here, Real Joe Cruz.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
The University of Guam Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific. Join us on February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 to 9 p.m. and enjoy a night of live entertainment and cultural delicacies, all while exploring the many ways we celebrate love in the region. Tickets are $60 per person and include free-flowing drinks. Proceeds will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs. Visit give.uog.edu and click Shop to get your tickets today. Sponsored by the Guam Daily Post, Matson Navigation, and Choice Broadcasting.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So, if you're still trying to guess, when I saw the words executive session connected with raises, it raised a mental red flag, because we have a statute that says you cannot discuss raises in executive session. And any discussion of raises in executive session means that the raises are void. So let me see what another Joe has to say about raises here, Real Joe Cruz, and then I'll come back to the CCU. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Oh, man, Uncle Bob, I wasn't really going to ask about raises or say anything about raises, but usually if you're talking about the private sector, if it's small business owners, if you force pay raises, if they're not prepared to pay them, it's going to just add to the overhead. But if you're talking about the federal government, I mean, the way that things have gone, it seems as though it's something that you can't ignore because it's the will of the people. But you know, that doesn't mean they're going to get all that they want. You know, just debate exactly how much a pay raise. But is that what you were talking about, or just totally different?
Yeah, this was raises for managerial employees at the Power Authority and the Water Authority. That's what I was talking about.
Well, I have to say, if it's a big if they keep up to date and share with us what exactly the expenditures are going to be, and they don't, you know, we're not surprised like we are with a landfill that they're going to take a loan for $30 million, and anytime they have to raise money, there's a plan in place, and every time you call them up, they answer the phone. And they get back to you. I would say it just depends on their performance. Water is a touchy issue because you know you get a feeling that they're maybe trying their best. What was the other utility? I forget.
Power and water.
Power. They're really disappointing there, Uncle Bob, because I mean, just word of mouth. Old power plants have been neglected in the past, and you're talking about millions of dollars to replace those power plants, tens of millions, maybe more. And then the ones we have now is a question whether it's enough or we need more. And there's this thing about fuel efficiency. Like they're saying, oh, you can't burn anything with sulfur. And then they came back, this is going back maybe almost a year, as well, what are we going to use? You know, a lot of our fuel has high sulfur content. So what else, you know, if you're going to get picky about that, then we're going to pay a lot more money in power.
Well,
But,
the CCU has worked through these things, and they had to pay a $400,000 fine because they were burning high sulfur fuel for a long, long time. They got waivers for quite some time, but that's the reason that they're building this new power plant. They took a fair amount of heat for building the new power plant, but my basic analysis of the CCU, and I went into this yesterday, is that things are so much better now than they were before 2001 when the CCU took over the two utilities, that there isn't much to compare. But the salary thing has been a matter of controversy, as Ken Leon Guerrero pointed out. But I'll get into that in the context of this story here, okay? Another, Joe?
Okay, sure. Go ahead with the story.
Okay.
Oh, you already said the story.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that a little bit more, okay? Okay, and then I also have Sam on the line. Sam, do you want to talk about the Power Authority?
No, not the Power Authority, Bob.
What would you like to talk about, Sam?
Government of Guam vehicles.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
just came from the Ganya post office with a white four-door Hyundai, expired license plate sticker, number 65, with no notification of what department it was from, with a handicap sticker, and the guy went in and got his mail.
And this is a government vehicle?
It's a GovGuam license plate number 65.
Wow.
At 4:55 on a Thursday afternoon with a handicap sticker on the mirror.
Now, one would wonder why I don't think I've seen that before, the handicap sticker on a government vehicle, but...
And there were no indications to what department it was, so I asked the individual who came out and said, I'm handicapped. I said, okay, what department do you work for? And he said, DOA.
Okay, Sam. Well,
I've been seeing a lot of the government cars with license plates, but no notifications to what department they're supposed to be registered to.
it's very interesting. Would you have a mind to call the Department of Administration tomorrow and ask who that car was assigned to?
I believe that's probably going to be on my to-do list.
I'd really appreciate it, and let us know what you find out. And if you are amenable, I will deputize you to be the Tall Tales Posse enforcement of misuse of government vehicles.
Well, I could probably take that on assignment.
It's a tough job, Sam, but I think you can handle it.
But I see a lot of government cars out there with no indication to what agency they're supposed to be from.
Well, you've heard me talk about the police officer who was driving a government vehicle late at night drunk and got into a $12,000 accident and was able to stay on the payroll. So this is something...
And my guess is...
Go ahead.
My guess is his payroll amounted to about 3 times that amount of the wreck during all this so-called investigation.
Very possible. So if citizens like us don't stand up, people think they can get away with it. So thanks for bringing that up, Sam. I appreciate it.
Have a great show, Bob.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, let's break for that big halftime show that we've been dealing with here at Tall Tales. I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More controversy over Roger Stone's sentencing. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Calls for investigations into a decision by the Justice Department to scale back its suggested sentence for the former political advisor.
With sentencing for the president's longtime friend and confidant, Roger Stone, set for February 20th, President Trump non-committal on whether he will pardon Stone, who is convicted for obstructing a congressional inquiry, witness intimidation, and repeatedly lying to federal investigators.
I don't want to say that yet, but I tell you what, people were hurt viciously and badly by these corrupt people.
4 federal prosecutors abruptly withdrew from the case after senior Justice Department officials intervened to recommend a more lenient sentence. Questions have been raised by congressional Democrats about whether the DOJ was bending to White House pressure.
Fox's John Decker at the White House reports Attorney General William Barr has agreed to appear before the House Judiciary Committee to answer those questions. A cruise ship turned away by 4 Asian governments now anchored off the coast of Cambodia to have its passengers tested for the coronavirus.
There are several hundred Americans on board the Westerdam, which left a port in Hong Kong on February 1st. It was turned away from ports in Thailand, the Philippines, Taiwan, and Japan after health officials in those countries learned the vessel was carrying passengers with recent travel to China. World Health Organization officials said there are no recorded cases of COVID-19, that's the new name for this virus, aboard the Westerdam.
Fox's Jonathan Seri aboard another cruise ship anchored at Yokohama, Japan. Another 44 cases of the virus confirmed. Now 218 people aboard that ship sickened, and another case of the virus confirmed in the United States, bringing the total here to 14. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on, that was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Live the balanced lifestyle. Take Care Insurance offers proven wellness and fitness programs to encourage individuals and families to live a healthy, balanced lifestyle through preventative care, being active, eating right, relaxing and unwinding, and being socially connected. They have the island's largest offering of free fitness classes and health education programs for all ages. Join the movement. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram or visit takecareasia.com to learn more.
Is there someone out there trying to communicate with us? NASA is trying to find out.
Researchers at NASA would love to know what or who is sending out radio waves in a cyclical pattern. The findings of the scientists are being published this week. They say they've been observing bursts of radio signals, milliseconds in duration, but occurring nearly hourly for a 4-day period, followed by silence for about 12 days, only for the cycle to resume. It's estimated the signals originate 500 million light years away and are most likely not intentional broadcasts by sentient beings, but naturally occurring, emanating from a star and nearly interrupted by orbiting planets or other bodies. But the scientists observed the pattern for about a year. Eben Brown, Fox News.
2 Baltimore area police officers shot and wounded Wednesday trying to serve a warrant on a murder suspect.
One officer is doing very, very well. I got a chance to talk with him. He was shot in the leg, and he's, I think, going to make a full recovery. He was in great spirits. The other officer just came out of surgery from multiple gunshots. They said it was a serious but stable condition.
That's Maryland's Governor Larry Hogan. The suspect, a former corrections officer, was shot and killed by police. Pitchers and catchers have begun reporting to spring training this year with several new rules to learn.
Major League Baseball going forward with rule changes agreed upon with the Players Union last March, including a 3-batter minimum for pitchers to face. That's going to take effect in spring training next month, allowing pitchers to only exit with injury or illness. In addition, the active roster limit for opening day through August 31st was increased from 25 players to 26. September rosters now only going to expand to 20 28 instead of 40. Clubs may not reinstate pitchers from the injured list until 15 days have elapsed from the date of their initial IL placement. That's up from 10 days. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And in New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Off a day, this is Congressman Michael Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael Nicholas.
The University of Guam Endowment Foundation presents How to Say I Love You, Love Languages in the Pacific. Join us on February 13th at the Guam Museum from 6 to 9 p.m. and enjoy a night of live entertainment and cultural delicacies, all while exploring the many ways we celebrate love in the region. Tickets are $60 per person and include free-flowing drinks. Proceeds will benefit the liberal arts and fine arts programs. Visit give.uog.edu and click Shop to get your tickets today. Sponsored by the Guam Daily Post, Matson Navigation, and Choice Broadcasting.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are after that big halftime show that we've all come to love so much. The marching bands, the cheerleaders, the drill team, the sword swallower, the fire eater, the synchronized card section up in the stand, and that barrage of cannon fire at the end of the show. It just doesn't get any better than that. So before the break, I was talking about the CCU, and I've got a good article here from KUAM that I think outlines it pretty well. A December Office of the Public Auditor audit questioned about $1.3 million in raises and bonuses at the Power Authority and Waterworks, saying the Consolidated Commissions on Utilities had violated the open government law when it approved them. CCU Chairman Joey Duenas admits commissioners did talk about the money during closed-door executive sessions, but he said they would always, with the exception of one meeting last November, announce and vote on the raises afterward during open session. But the public auditor saw it differently. Quote, his view was that you decided in executive session, you have merely announced it in open session. So, and then Dwayne, this is from Dwayne, and he says, so there's a difference of opinion. And this, you know, this generated an awful lot of conversation after the illegal November 2018 raises were discovered. Joey Duenas dug his heels in and said, all we did in executive session was evaluate these managers. We didn't assign salaries to them. We only evaluated them. And then in open session, we came out and announced what the salaries would be. And I made the point then, and I'll make it again now, although Joey Duenas is still hanging on to it. How do you determine whether a person is entitled to a salary increase without evaluating him? So when the statute says that any salary increase discussed in executive session is void, that means the whole thing. Not, you can't go into executive session and say, well, yeah, this guy walks on water And, since he took over, our costs have decreased by 10%, and the absenteeism is way, way down, and he's done a really great job. And we can't talk about salary. Now we'll go into open session and decide how much he should get. It just doesn't work that way. To say that you arrived at a salary in open session and ignored what you discussed in executive session suggests to me that the best way to assign salaries to these people is by examining the entrails of a pig, or rolling dice, or flipping coins, or drawing straws, or something like that. And then why would you not want to discuss the evaluations of your employees in open session? After all, they're public servants. They work for us. So what's to be kept private? There's no reason not to do all of this in open session. So because the public auditor went back and listened to all of these tapes and determined that they violated the law 10 different times, the CCU decided that they would go back and take another look at these things. And this is what the article says. The article says, in other words, they discussed the raises and bonuses and improved them all over again in open session last night. Dueñas said, so to clarify it for the whole world, we decided to have a meeting and de novo address each and every one of those meetings. In other words, they discussed the raises and bonuses and improved them all over again in an open session last night. But Dueñas also acknowledges that it wasn't just how they gave the raises that drew public concern. It's that they gave them in the first place. I don't think that's correct. I think that this is just Dueñas not wanting to let go of the fact that he made a mistake. And because he made a mistake, the November 2018 raises were all void. And that BJ, the public auditor, said you got to collect them back. One of those raises they're collecting back over the next 10 years. And also Joey Dueñas said, no, you can't see the notes. You can't listen to the recordings of those meetings because we're protecting the employees' privacy. Well, finally, that came before the commission itself, and 3 commissioners said, yeah, we're going to make those documents public. So this was really a sad incident for the CCU. And as I pointed out yesterday, I've been a CCU fan since 2001. I think the situation is much better now that the CCU is running the utilities than it had been before. We don't hear the load shedding blues much anymore. But the way they handled that, the November 2018 mistake was a serious one, but it was made far more serious than it should have been because Joey Dueñas kept trying to finesse it and come out and say, yeah, we made a mistake. We're going to have to void, those raises are void. We're going to have to collect them back. We're going to put systems in place to make sure that this never happens again. That would have been the way to do it. But even now, that they have had a meeting and, on advice of counsel, attempted to cure those problems that were caused because they didn't follow the open government law. That would have been a good place to stop right there and then address the merits of the raises in a different story. But that's not how it came out. Here's some more quotes from Joey Dueñas. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to tell you, we pay people what they're worth, Dueñas said. The people that we have are competent people, and I would put GPA up and GWA up to any other utility in the Pacific Basin, including Honolulu. He says they compared similar jurisdictions in the mainland and found top management was making much less than their counterparts and had greater responsibilities. He said the top managers, GPA's John Benevente and GWA's Miguel Bordallo, who make $225,000 and $175,000 respectively, are only in the 50 and 40 percentile based on national industry standards. Dueñas said he understands the public backlash, but stands by their decisions. I appreciate that people are making salaries or wages that they look and that they're making minimum wages. I get that. But the people that we have here are people who have lots of training, lots of education, lots of skills. And again, two things you have to pay people what they're worth. And why would we not want to pay our local people what they're worth? We don't have, if they weren't local, we wouldn't want to pay them what they're worth, right? But if they're local, then we want to pay them what they're worth. We seem to always kind of slip into this, don't we? And I got a couple interesting comments that appear with the KUM column here. I'll read those. I mean, the KUM story in the KUM story. Mike Carlson, if the GPA legal counsel had informed the CCU of the section of the open government law prior to his raise and all the other raises being discussed, the CCU chair would not have to deflect as much as he has of late. By the way, this section of the law has been in effect since the 19th Guam legislature, and that was another really interesting part of the whole story. They went into an illegal executive session, and they illegally discussed salary increases in the session, even though there were two lawyers there, Graham Botha and Kelly Clark. And both Clark and Botha sat in this illegal executive session, which was bad of itself, which wasn't good of itself. But both of them got raises in that illegal executive session. Yeah, talk about physician, heal thyself. So because of that, and the windup after this was all discovered, then the CCU had to hire another lawyer to guide them through this mess because those two were conflicted. And Kelly Clark maintained that, nobody gets to see my evaluation. That's private, that's confidential. And he wrote a nasty letter to guess who?
You?
Yes. He wrote a nasty letter to me saying that if I discussed those evaluations, he was going to sue me. So that was really, really unfortunate, the whole thing. And again, I'm going to blow my own horn here. A champion of the CCU until this happened. And the CCU, I think it was either PNC or KUM at the end of the year listed the 10 top news stories. That salary kerfuffle was number 2. So, they built 18 years. They worked on building up their credibility and were doing a great job. And they blew it all in one silly executive session. And then that wasn't bad enough, because as Mike Carlson says here, the CCU chair would not have to deflect as much as he has. And that's exactly, instead of meeting the problem head on, the CCU chairman kept deflecting and is still deflecting instead of working really hard to get to regain the credibility CCU needs. And it really of any organization on island that really craves credibility is the CCU, because they have to make hard decisions. They have to increase power and water rates from time to time. They have to go on the bond market and borrow huge amounts of money. This whole thing about building the new power plant caused everybody and his brother to come out of the woodwork to criticize them, because the environmental wackos don't want to build a power plant that burns fossil fuel. They want to go to solar power, renewable energy, tomorrow morning. And they want it to work 24 hours. They want it to work day and night. And, I followed the rationale that the CCU was advancing as they moved towards this new power plant, and it all made a lot of sense. But, the problem for them was that once you take a hit on your credibility, then there's always a little suspicion left over when you go into something else. It takes a long time to build up your credibility. And then let's see, we've got Matthew Phillips, who's a pretty frequent commenter here these days. Matthew Phillips says, these days the populist anger comes in many forms, and it could even manifest itself, as is described in today's Post editorial, in the form of boycotts. He's talking about yesterday in China and boycotts, etc. Individuals and businesses might decide to go 100% renewal themselves. I think he means renewable themselves. Well, that's interesting, Matthew. I remember, it's probably been 15 years ago now, when the whole townhouse shopping center, Agania Shopping Center, decided that they'd had enough of GPA, and they were going to build their own power plant. And they built their own power plant down at GPA, and I don't think they generated enough power to light a flashlight off that, and it turned out to be a financial disaster for them. It just wasn't as easy as people might think. So Matthew goes on to say, other less desirable boycotts would be targeting the business of Simon Sanchez. No, I don't think so. I would be opposed to that, just like when folks protesting outside Phil Flores's Bank Pacific back in 2000s. Well, let's not do that. Let's not talk about that. That's not a good idea. It was, I think, a good idea for the CCU to do something about the illegal meetings and the illegal salary increases. So often, I think we delude ourselves into thinking that people in public life have choices between doing a good thing and a bad thing, or a right thing and a wrong thing. And an awful lot of the time, it just doesn't work out that way. They can do a bad thing or a badder thing. Sometimes the choices are between two alternatives, neither one of which is very attractive. So I suppose the CCU on these illegal raises over the last several years could have just put on a blindfold and put in earplugs and figured, well, if we can get away with it, if nobody sues, if nothing happens, we'll be okay. But it seems that the responsible thing to do is what they did. Now, if anybody wants to talk about the salaries paid to those managers, like Ken, we can do that. We can talk about what we think the manager of the Power Authority and the manager of the Water Authority and some of these other folks are actually being paid, and whether we're paying them too much, etc. That would certainly be good talk radio. But as it is, let's hope that the CCU and every other government agency, let's hope that this was all a lesson to them. Judy Guthertz at one time made the public statement, well, the way we dealing with whether or not the minutes for that meeting and the recording for that illegal meeting should be made public, Judy Guthertz made the comment, well, the way we handle this may be instructive for other agencies. And I would say that this whole kerfuffle should be instructive for other agencies, and that is, don't even think about going into executive session. Any member of a board or commission, don't even think about it unless you and with your own piece of paper and a pencil can write down the legal authority that you have to go into executive session. If you can't do that, don't do it. Don't get caught up in this everybody knows we can go in executive session because we're discussing a personnel matter. Don't do that. There are very few reasons that agencies can go into executive session. Oftentimes, the law would allow it but doesn't require it. I don't know of a single statutory provision that ever requires executive session. Permits, yes. Requires, no. So a guiding principle ought to be, why do we have to discuss this in private when we are a public agency? Okay, next item I have is Lou versus EITC reimbursement. I thought that was in today's Daily News, but I don't seem to be able to find it. I'm going to take another peek here, see if I can find it. Let's see, I got a phone call here from another Joe. So another Joe, I'm going to be looking at this while I'm talking to you, okay? Okay, another Joe?
Okay, Bob. So actually, what I called about was, excuse me, before was, we were upset because locals feel as though they're being it seems as though they're saying they're being disenfranchised, or the impression was locals, as we're getting older, we're systematically becoming disenfranchised due to our federal government and the agreement, with a diplomatic agreement with a very, very small nation, and somehow we as Americans are abdicating our rights and privileges, or perhaps some people would think it's just what do they call it when people think that they have a right to something? Usually you describe Democrats this way, the entitlement issues.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know that it's entitlement issues. If it's truly looked at as a Chamorro identity or ethnic group that feels in theory they have a homeland, in other words, a nation within a nation. To what extent, I don't know. But if where we're at is majority rules. If we want to be better stewards, whether you identify as Chamorro or not, and you have no problem with allowing Chamorros to attempt to be good stewards of said small homeland, so to speak, then possibly, or some things could be debated. Whether, for example, do we need to have an international airport? If we think that a million and a half to 2 million that's enough tourists, right? Do we need an international airport to do that annually? Also, of the tourists that we do get, are we allowed to require a return trip ticket or otherwise proof that they're able to support themselves, which possibly is already in the books but not being enforced? What do you think, Uncle Bob? Does any of what I just said make sense?
Well, I get lucky once in a while, real Joe Cruz. Even a broken clock tells the correct time twice a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, do you think we need an international airport if we figure that 1.5 to 2 million international tourists annually is enough for that's a reasonable amount to expect for a limited amount of land to tour? Is that a reasonable thought to say, well, we maybe don't even need an international airport. We just need a localized airport, and one that just goes straight from Guam to U.S. ports and possibly rarely to Japan. and South Korea. I don't know how they did. Sorry.
I'm not quite sure the point you're making.
Well, what do we have before we had the international airport? We just had the old one there.
I'll tell you, going way, way back to the early 60s, we had a Quonset hut on board Naval Air Station. One non-air conditioned Quonset hut.
And everyone had to get cleared through the military, right?
Yeah, you had to go through the military gate to get to that Quonset hut, unair-conditioned Quonset hut, and if you were in there after 8 o'clock in the morning, it was hotter than the hinges of hell. It was incredibly uncomfortable. But that was our airport in those days. And then from there, we went to the airport that for a little while was the commuter air terminal, which is a little bit to the south of our air terminal now. And when that was built, man, we thought we really got something nice. But international travel then was from Guam to the Trust Territory. And then when we finally built the airport that we have now, it was 1/3 the size that it is now when it was first built. And it was basically built by duty-free shoppers. The amount that they paid for the concession secured the bond that built the first air terminal. And, of course, you know what we have now. We have a real international airport. But I don't think I want to go back to that Quonset hut on board Naval Air Station another day.
What about something in between? It's kind of public-private partnership where we have a cap on, we say, okay, the most we'll have is 2 million tourists, which we may or may not reach. And everybody goes through, gets screened, quasi-local Guam FAA and the military. Everyone, I mean, you know, basic idea is you can't come here unless you got a plan, right? And the military, it's okay with the military, it's okay with the local government, and you got a return trip ticket, or else you better be able to pay for yourself. You know, is there something that can be worked out with, you know, like maybe it's a little bit less than what we have now with the international airport, or you think it wouldn't be unpopular to do that?
I think it would. I certainly wouldn't be in favor of it. Another Joe.
All right, thanks for your time. Welcome up.
Thanks for the call, Another Joe. Okay, we got the 7th inning stretch coming up.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Why do good employees quit? We've given you 6 reasons already. Could there possibly be more? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, I'll have part 3 of those reasons why our best workers sometimes hit the road.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Try their featured special for February. Southern Spice Crispy Fried Chicken. Louisiana-inspired fried half chicken. Served with red beans and rice. Available in Agutya and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Okay, so center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, the 7th inning stretch. And from there, we go to the card, Lou versus EITC reimbursement. And I've got that on my iPad here. This is Lou, our governor, testifying before Congress, talking about compact impact, etc. And then she also said, Governor Leon Guerrero also applauded a House bill, and the title of this item on the card is Lou versus the EITC reimbursement. Michael St. Nicholas introduced a bill that would cause the U.S. Treasury to reimburse 75% of the amount that the Guam Treasury paid out in earned income tax credits. 75%. And I went through that yesterday, explained how it worked, etc., that how the earned income tax credit works, that it is a matter strictly of what you would call federal law and the mirror image of the Federal Internal Revenue Code that applies here in Guam. It's got nothing to do with states, state income tax, etc. So here's what our governor said when she was testifying before the Interior Committee of the House, talking about compact impact. Okay. And then she also goes on to say, the article goes on to say, Governor Leon Guerrero also applauded a House bill that would reimburse GovGuam for earned income tax credit for low-income residents, which is an estimated $60 million a year. Here's a quote. The language will direct the U.S. Treasury to reimburse Guam for 75% of its EITC costs, Governor Leon Guerrero said. Mr. San Nicolas is a sponsor of this bill, though I believe that Guam and our sister territories should be treated equally with the states, reimbursing us 100% of our costs. H.R. 3300 is a step towards fairness. No, 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 Governor Leon Guerrero. You made a fool out of yourself, and you made a fool out of us. And anybody sitting on that committee is probably thinking, if you're that dense and you don't understand how the earned income tax credit works, don't bother us with coming over here and asking us to reimburse it. Because if you don't know how it works, hard to say what you do with the money. But here it is one more time. The earned income tax credit is a function of the Federal Internal Revenue Code. And the way it works is that certain low-income people with large families get more money back from the IRC than they paid in. A tax refund means you overpaid. Your tax liability was $1,000, and your withholding tax, et cetera, came up to $1,500, so you get $500 back. The way the earned income tax credit works is this. You didn't pay any tax, or you paid, let's say you paid $100 worth of tax, but you had a large family and a low income, so the earned income tax credit amounts to $2,000. 1,000 from 100 from 2,000, you get a $1,900 tax credit. You get more money back than you owed in taxes. That's how it works. It's part of the Internal Revenue Code. Want to know what it has to do with the folks living in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, or Wisconsin? Are you ready for this? Nothing. Not a thing. Because states do not pay earned income tax credit, period. It comes from the federal treasury. Where does the federal treasury get the money that it uses to pay earned income tax credit? From the income taxes that it collects from everybody who pays taxes. So it's one of those wealth-shifting gimmicks that liberals love so well. That's how the earned income tax credit works. How does earned income tax credit work on Guam? The same exact way. A low-income taxpayer with a large family is in a position where he may get a refund that's larger than the amount he paid in. It's called the Earned Income Tax Credit. Where do we get the money that we use for Earned Income Tax Credit? From the money that you and I pay into income tax, just like in the states. States are never reimbursed for the money for any money for Earned Income Tax Credit. Never. Now, I had to call out the Post on that the other day because the Post got it wrong. And maybe this is one of those old wives' tales, one of those everybody knows. Everybody knows if it's a personnel matter, government officials can't talk about it. Like our friend who called up and said, "Oh, hey, Bob, want to hear a joke? How many GovGuam employees does it take to change a light bulb?" "I don't know, Jimmy. How many does it take?" "I can't tell you. It's a personnel matter." Yeah, maybe it's one of those that the feds reimburse the states for Earned Income Tax Credit, but they don't do us. It's just another way that the U.S. is screwing Guam because they don't reimburse us for Earned Income Tax Credit. Wrong, 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 Lou. And I think that if we had a shot at it, it's a good idea for Michael to introduce that bill. I think the chances of it going anywhere are slim, but it's one of those kinds of things there's no harm in asking, provided that you don't make a fool out of yourself when you ask for it. And that's what you did here when you said, what was that quote again? Let me pull that up one more time. Mr. San Nicolas is sponsor of the bill, though I believe that Guam and our brothers and our sisters in territories should be treated equally as the states, with the states by reimbursing us 100% of our costs. The states are not reimbursed Earned Income Tax Credit because they never pay it. You know, when I read stuff like this, it's really hard to maintain my usual calm, cool demeanor, because the folks at that committee are thinking, when Guam sends people back here to testify in front of Congress, they're not sending the second string. They're not sending they're not sending their second best. They're sending the best that they've got. And they're making the best arguments that they have because we are the United States Congress. And then Lou goes over there and says, we should be treated like the states. Bad, bad, bad. And all of you separatists out there, that you want the Congress to say, you want the United States Congress to say, yes, if those folks want to be independent, we wish them the best. We're not showing ourselves, a performance like this does not show us able, really, to be able to take care of ourselves in that respect. Bad mistake. Okay, the next item on my card here is the Department of Public Works versus Idinga. And I think I have an article that deals with that. A PNC article. Yeah. So you all know that Linda Uggan was the SHPO. Talk about a snazzy title. Wow, the SHPO. State Historical Preservation Officer. And for quite some time, the SHPO seemed to have tremendous authority, because the SHPO signed off on the programmatic agreement with the feds and had a role in enforcing the programmatic agreement. And Linda Uggan, as the SHPO, was a household word for quite some time. A new director came on board at the Department of Public Works, a new director of public, as it were, Parks and Recreation came on board and had the temerity to fire Linda Uggan for several reasons, which to me made a certain amount of sense. You know, like using a government official car for a personal errand. Now, we just had a caller a little earlier tell us about that. When that matter went before the Civil Service Commission, the administrative law judge kind of bluffed it. You know, they needed to get together for lunch or something like that. But using official government of Guam cars for personal errands is not something that should ever be condoned. But that was by far, you know, one of her minor offenses. The administrative law judge said she was clearly insubordinate. And his decision was that the termination was good, that she should have been fired, and when the administrative law judge upheld management's decision, that was the correct decision. Well, the way the law is set up, the administrative law judge's decision, and it's not a recommendation, it's a decision. If you check out the statute, it's a decision. His decision is sent to the Civil Service Commission, which can affirm, modify, or reject the decision. So it went to the Civil Service Commission. 3 commissioners voted to affirm the decision. One commissioner, Tuncap, what's her first name, real Joe Cruz?
Which commissioner from?
Civil Service Commission.
It's not Jadine Tuncap? No.
She voted to reject the decisions. Yeah. So Ms. Tuncap voted to so the vote was 3 in favor of affirming the decision, 1 to reject. And the chairman of the Civil Service Commission took the mic and said, therefore, Linda Uggan gets her job back. I don't see how that possibly can be. If the administrative law judge makes a decision, the commission can accept, reject, or modify. But the rules of the commission say it takes 4 members to act. Now, one of the members was off island at the time. And I think there are only 5 members appointed. So that being the case, there was no Civil Service Commission decision on the books. So the decision of the administrative law judge had to control. Now, maybe the Civil Service Commission could get together later on and try again. But to say, well, the commission couldn't decide because there's a rule of 4, therefore she gets her job back, to me is nonsensical. But that's not why I put it on the card. I went through that before. So Patrick Lujan was appointed the SHPO during the time that Linda Uggan was out of her job because she's been dismissed. Now, in the 34th Guam legislature, once again, the legislature engaged in some gross malpractice because they enacted a statute that says that if an employee is fired and the termination is reversed by the Civil Service Commission and the government appeals the commission decision, the employee gets their job back during the time that the matter's on appeal. That makes no sense whatsoever. If you assume that a person was fired for good reason, then you bring them back on a technicality. And what happens if the Superior Court said the termination is good? Then they're bounced again? And then it could go to the Superior, so this employee could wind up being the bouncing ball, in and out and in and out. That's not good management. Now, I have a pretty good idea of what the motivating factor for people in the legislature is when they enact statutes like this. I have to stick up for the employees because, management's really bad. And if I don't stick up for the employees, they're going to get screwed every time. So we've got to really tilt the rules as far as we can. to protect the employees in situations like this, so that they're not stuck by this really bad management. So the day after the Civil Service Commission entered what they call a judgment, and once again, this is silly. Commissions don't enter judgments. Courts enter judgments because they have, guess who signs off on judgments in courts? They're people called judges, not commissioners. Okay, so I'm going to take Department of Parks and Recreation versus the Dinga right down to the home stretch here, I think.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Grow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, it takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Grow, we're here for life.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, the home stretch. That means I got about 8 more minutes to wrap up another exciting, educational, elucidating, informative episode of the greatest afternoon talk show on FM radio in the Western Pacific. So back to DPR versus Idinga. So during the time that Linda Uggan was off the payroll, a gentleman named Patrick Lujan was brought in to serve as the SHPO.
Oh, I think I get this twin thing going on. Clever, Bob.
Yeah, so Patrick had served as the assistant SHPO before, so he knew the drill, and he stepped in, and he didn't seem like he had a learning curve at all. He stepped right in, stepped into the batter's box, and took a swing at the first pitch. Seemed to be doing a pretty credible job. So now the question is, Patrick Lujan is the SHPO, and Linda Uggan has been reinstated by a bogus Civil Service Commission decision. So now what do we have? The SHPO twins here? You know, Linda Uggan and Patrick Lujan, they look so much alike that only their mothers can tell them apart. Idinga.
At least they're not conjoined, sir.
Yeah. but I can refer to the SHPO as they, right?
Yes, you can, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the answer to that little dilemma. As for Uggan, she is back at the Department of Parks and Rec, but she has not resumed her former title as State Historic Preservation Officer, or SHPO. Patrick Lujan replaced Uggan as the SHPO after she was fired last June, and he remains in that position. Well, I just looks, I have this mental image of a couple of hockey players, body checking one another here. I'm the SHPO. No, I'm the SHPO. Get out of my, I'm the SHPO. It is a position that requires federal approval and is outside the Civil Service Commission's regulatory authority. The fact that it's outside the Civil Service Commission's regulatory authority never stopped them before. Why is this different? Uggan is only the Guam Historic Preservation Officer. So she's the GIPO. Well, Patrick Lujan is the SHIPO. Uggan is only the Guam Historic Preservation Officer, a different title and position, but a classified Guam position. However, Uggan will no longer have the authority to make any modification to the programmatic agreement governing the military buildup. That authority rests with the SHIPO, who continues to be Patrick Lujan.
Should we win one for the GIPO, sir?
Yeah, so I suppose as time goes on, we'll see an item on the card, the SHIPO versus the GIPO, right? So if Linda Uggan is not going to be the SHIPO, what is she going to do now? This guy, whose name I forgot, wrote a scathing letter to the Civil Service Commission saying, don't bring that lady back. She's nothing but trouble. And that was the testimony before the Civil Service Commission, that she was not exactly, not exactly on the top of everybody's Christmas card list that worked there at the Department of Parks and Recreation. So what's it going to be like, or what's it like now that Linda Uggan is back and she's not the SHIPO, she's the GIPO? What about the folks, what about the people who wrote this letter? None of this sounds like it is an exercise in good management. Now, when it comes to terminating employees, it's something that nobody enjoys. It's what I call the bad news business. And when a person is in the bad news business, even people who agree with what they do will sometimes be oppositional because they just don't like the result. So when a director has to fire somebody for cause, it's not a source of celebration for anyone. The director doesn't hand out souvenir pens that he used to sign the final notice of adverse action. And he doesn't go around fist bumping everybody. That's Nancy Pelosi, right? So, but there are times, as a director, that the director has to come to this conclusion. I would be better off, my agency would be better off if this person weren't here, even if I can't replace that person, and even if I wind up paying that person salary for a reinstatement, because that person's presence in the department is so counterproductive. This must have been the thought process that governed Richard Ibanez's decision when he fired Linda Uggan. So then the Civil Service Commission comes along with this bogus ruling where the administrative law judge says, yes, it was a good firing. The facts are correct. It's not too harsh, et cetera, et cetera. 3 of the members vote to accept the decision. And is it Lydia Tuncap?
I'm not sure, sir. I can't recall. I'm not good at names like you are. It's gonna pop in your head any minute.
I'm on my way home. Yeah. Anyhow, this commissioner named Tuncap voted no. There were a couple of votes she voted no both times. And I hope she's watching, because she's going to watch as this plays out. She's going to see her handiwork in action. So we'll come back to this tomorrow and wrap it up. Tomorrow is the end of the week. And the Real Joe Cruz and I have, it's a long weekend coming up, and the Real Joe Cruz and I have got some really good news for you tomorrow. So make sure you're here tomorrow. Adios.